I
So
love
that's
it.
I can do.
I think it's so good. It is what it is.
That's right. It is what it is.
How are you, my dear?
I'm doing well. It's Wednesday. I'm counting down till Friday, although all the days kind of run together now. So they're all kind of the same, but I do really look forward to happy hour nights.
I do too.
It's like such a nice little pick me up, and it gets my social juices flowing, and it's just one of those things to look forward to when all the days seem the same.
Are you gonna get dressed up?
Yes, I don't know to what extent.
Yeah,
We'll
same.
see. We'll see how the day goes. I am working on site on Friday, so
Okay.
we shall see what that looks like at 5:30.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm celebrating, I might wear just like dress and heels and stuff, or I might just say, you know what, jeans and an actual t-shirt and not a workout tank top are good enough today.
Yes. It is really funny, the jeans thing, because I have jeans on again now. I put on jeans yesterday because I had a couple things that I wanted to do, and I kind of took the like tip for granted when we were talking about it, because I was like, oh yeah, like I get that. But when I put jeans on yesterday, I was like, man, I don't even know how long it had been since I took time to like put thought into what I was wearing, and it did. It made
Right.
I was like, I am an adult.
Absolutely.
All grown up right now with jeans.
I know it's weird because I get to wear jeans to work right now, and I don't normally get to do that. So jeans have like a whole new like dress up meaning right now. Like that is getting dressed up. That is work appropriate, work attire, right? So right now I'm working from home. I'm wearing my good black leggings, right? Not my workout black leggings.
Yeah.
These are like my fancy ones.
It fits like how the mighty have fallen. So I will tell you, I'm going to start out by being very honest. I almost canceled on you today. And
Okay.
I'm just going to tell you why, because I think it really ties into this whole conversation. I've just had this like whole thought. So for anybody who ends up watching this, today is Wednesday, April 22nd. And we are just over a month into this COVID-19 pandemic, kind of, well, much longer, I guess, in that throughout the world. But in our area of Cambridge, Maryland, we were shut down from a business standpoint around the 16th of March. And I got sick the following week. I was not feeling well. And my husband, if you do not know, works at the Hyatt here in town, and was still working. They were still up and running. They're an essential business, so they technically could be open now if it made sense for them to be from an operational standpoint. And I was uncomfortable with him coming and going with my germs, and then with him interacting with people at the hotel. And so just by nature of choice, he stayed at the hotel. And he has been there ever since. I am clearly not sick anymore. And I ended up getting tested. I was negative. And we went through kind of an evolution of, were you going to come back home? Just through the nature of his job, it makes more sense for him to stay there anyway. With just a skeleton staff, and they really can't leave a hotel totally unattended. There's a lot of different things that tend to happen, and they don't have the same sort of overnight staff and people around. So from an ownership standpoint, they just feel much more comfortable with having him there with the overnight security as well. But I've gone through a really like up and down wave of emotions about it all. I think because one, we were so quick to be okay with it that I was like, what does this say about my marriage? And I'm like, why don't you go stay at a hotel for, we're going on a month now. He's been there since, I got tested on the 25th. So he's been there about a month. I bet it was about March 22nd that he stayed there. But so today's been a perfect example of how this whole coronavirus experience has been for me. And it's very similar to opening a business. It's just a barrage of new things and thoughts and ideas and opinions on how to evolve and continue to change. And it's a steadily moving target. So you never really feel content that you've got a grasp on anything. Like the minute you feel like I have a hold on something, then 3 other things come up that I definitely do not have a hold on. And then you try to get your mind around that. And then other things just, it's a moving target. And I feel really comfortable now in the fact that I actually just don't have that to like, I don't even know what it is. Is it like mental capacity or emotional strength to give to someone else right now? And the reality is that Joel doesn't either, because he's dealing with his own barrage of Corona closure, you know, from that end, where he has his same job title, but it is not at all the same job, like the process of managing a hotel. And so then when we were seeing each other and interacting, you know, there was almost just underlying tension. And it took me, you know, a few times to really realize it wasn't tension towards each other. It was just tension towards the experience, and that us having, like me having free reign of the house in the middle of the day, I can eat whenever I want and make decisions that work to like fully support what I'm going through, isn't necessarily a bad thing, because he needs to deal with his own thing. So if we were, you know, more in each other's business all day long, and we were in the same house trying to work so hard for these different goals, I can now appreciate how, you know, thankful I am for the situation that we're in. But I brought it up to you as a point that we can discuss, because I also know that you and your adorable husband, Jason, have very busy jobs and have, you know, different objectives now. He's getting into busy season with planting season. Obviously, what's going on with Corona has changed your scope of work dramatically in the last month. And, you know, we don't have kids, but how have you noticed maybe that you guys have been able to negotiate the process and how it works on a day-to-day schedule, how you decide who's parenting today or who's cooking or those sorts of things? I can only imagine.
I mean, there is no set schedule. So I think for one, it's having that expectation that we're just going to have to figure it out as we go.
Okay.
And I think luckily for both of us, we're okay with that. Like we fly by the seat of our pants on a lot of things, you know. So I'm not like so regimented in a daily routine or weekly routine that I'm thrown off by that. And luckily my job is flexible enough that it allows for that. But yeah, we talked a little bit about this as we were preparing for discussing it today, but it kind of brings up that whole, like, who's going to work today? Like, whose job is more important today? Who's going to be the default parent, right?
So how does that happen in the moment? Is it a daily thing? Is it like a Sunday evening thing that you kind of look at the week and you know, he's got, you know, decisions to make maybe based on what temperature it is the day or the weather, I would imagine to some extent, and you have different conference calls or?
Right. So this week we made the decision on who was going to work and staying home based on the rain forecast. So if you ever want to marry a farmer, get used to that.
I get that for sure.
But yeah, it was like, when all of this sort of started, we were utilizing my mother-in-law for a little bit of the daycare and childcare, and then just really kind of wanted to hunker down and eliminate our kids leaving and the in and out, you know, germs and things like that. And so when we made that decision, it was him and I sitting down together and saying, okay, you know what this means, right? This is setting up the expectation that this duty is now shared between you and I, and putting everything out there up front. And so his side of it was, I still need to plant corn, right? Like I still need to be there. I will talk to, in this case, you know, his employer is his parent. So I will talk to them and let them know that means I'm going to be there a little less
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'll talk to my boss and let them know that that means I'll be there a little less.
Yeah.
Because of the nature of our jobs, I am able to do a chunk of what I do from home. I can call into a conference call and I can write a letter and I can, offer advice and guidance on the phone. So that kind of like points the fingers at me, like, yeah, you're the one. But the good thing about the conversation that we had is that working from home is not just working from home. It's working from home while going through Sloan's kindergarten distance learning, while managing a toddler, an elderly dog who pees in the floor twice a day, and trying to like load and unload the dishwasher and do all the chores that you do when you're home. And so, I think he understands that when you do that too many days in a row, it really weighs on you. And so it's an idea of how many total days should we each be doing that away from work? And should we try to spread it out so that it's not weighing on your mental abilities and capacity? To me, like, that's the most important thing. Like, last week I was home with them Thursday and Friday, and then he was home for the weekend. So that was like my break. Like, we could share more of those duties.
Yeah.
And then I went to work Monday. So on Friday afternoon, I said, look, I need to go to work on Monday. I've had 2 days. It's your turn. And so there's a lot of this give and take, but it's a lot of just, I think, upfront discussion and like honesty about how you're feeling in the moment and what you need.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that whole honesty about what you need, because I can internalize his stress from work as some sort of reflection on our relationship. Because he'll come home and do some gardening or mow the lawn, and those sorts of things. So we interact and we are together. We're not necessarily quarantining from each other. It just so happens that due to work, he's over there much more than he's home. And it's really easy to kind of let that other underlying tension dictate how we interact with each other without really expressing how you're feeling. And so I felt like it was a load off when when I realized, like, oh, I can actually, or should actually just say, you know what, I feel like you should come home sometime just to spend time with me. Like, not necessarily around the task or the duty, and you're not coming home to do a thing. Like, it's important to me that it's important to you to spend time together, even though we're not together all of this time. And it seems like something like I can picture 3 friends that I have right off the bat being like, well, I don't want to need to tell him that it's important to spend time with me, but I feel like in this situation especially, and in life in general, it's unfair to have somebody else have the expectation that somebody else is just going to know what you're feeling or what you're thinking. And right now we are both just working so hard to succeed at our jobs that we're not overlooking the other person intentionally. It just is kind of happening, and it's up to that person that then kind of feels left behind to make a point to say that, in a tone that is appreciative of the effort that he's putting in. I had to, I had a couple of days where I was not lovely to live with, which works out well because I wasn't living with anybody at the time. But I sent a text to Joel saying, it turns out I am the isolation queen. And I followed it up with, not to be confused with the ice queen. Like,
Right.
Some humility.
Yeah, I think
when you're not being your best self either, it has been key for me.
Right. I think a younger me or a more immature me or a newer in our relationship me would have taken all of those actions to mean, well, that's more important than me.
Totally.
Right. And it's really hard to admit when you have those feelings, because when you say it out loud, it sounds petty. But it's not, because that's your raw emotion of it. Right. And so you kind of, that's the emotion you feel. That's not necessarily the intention or the reality. Right. And I think it's important to kind of figure out that they're different. I tell Sloan all the time, you can be mad, but you can't be mean. Like
Yeah.
you can have an emotion about
Yeah.
something that's going on, but it's not right to then act out on it in a way that, externalizes all these things. So I
Yeah.
think part of it too, and you might be able to relate to this, is, we've been in these long-term relationships with these men, right? So
Mhm.
I think we had said you guys just had 20 years. Jason and I are going on 18. I think when you're in a relationship for that long and you feel like there's such a strong foundation, yeah, you sometimes just, you know, you assume that other person just knows, like
Yeah.
that's the stable part right now. Like right now, when everything is chaotic, you're just like, okay, that's the one thing that I know. So I'm going to focus on all those other things that need to be done. But I think it's important with any relationship that still needs to be nurtured.
Hmm.
And so it is important to be honest about like how those things are making you feel. But on the one hand, you can look at it like, well, he doesn't think about me when he comes home because he knows that I'm there, or she knows that I'm there, and she knows that if she needs anything, she can ask me for it.
Right.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
and you brought up an interesting point about like the younger you would have internalized that as he's putting that job as more important than me. And I think the thing that I've been able to realize now is his job is more important than me right now. Like it literally is a situation of a lot of people are doing what they can to survive in that job, right? Like it is the most important thing for him right now to make sure that he can do everything he can to prepare that property for reopening. The reality is
Right.
that is a lot more important than a date night with me in the grand scheme of things for this time. And I think
Mhm.
really being able to compartmentalize different phases of relationships,
Mhm.
because it wasn't that long ago that we, maybe, so if we've been in this a month, back us up another month before that, we were that like blissfully in love, like annoyingly affectionate post like vacation around the world couple that would, you know what I mean? And that's a different phase and a fun phase and like reminiscing about when we got together and we just had the best vacation. And it would be irresponsible of me to forget that in this time and just completely discount that as like, oh, that was us before, but that's still us. That just, it
Mhm.
can't be us right now because we don't have that sort of energy to be giddy in love right now. Like that doesn't mean that we're not in love. That just means that we're not expressing it in the same ways right now. And I think that
Mhm.
was a huge kind of light bulb moment for me. Once I was like, when I think like, man, it wasn't too long ago that we were just like high on life, right? Like we were opening a business and it was on this long trip around the world and just had so much fun. And it feels like a lifetime ago, right? But it was literally like less than 60 days ago. So being able to put those highs and lows in perspective in any relationship is important to be able to create that longevity. Like the history that you
Oh
and I
yeah.
were talking about, I think that the strong foundation that we have comes from experiencing the different highs and lows and learning from ourselves in that, not even from our partner. Like I think it's unfair to go into it with an expectation of how my partner is going to react differently based on this, but I like how can I react differently to my partner that's going to help him get through the day understanding that he's going through the same sort of stress or more stress than I am. So do you have any
Right.
experiences of different like peaks or valleys in your relationship that like is this in terms of like COVID-19, do you feel like you guys are in a different like hunker down and fight for mode, like with like managing like life and work and all that, or you feel like you have a pretty steady rhythm at home and then you guys are both just going out into the world and coming back? Does that make sense? I don't even know
I
if that.
think the latter.
Okay,
I think the
cool.
latter. I mean, we are both fortunate enough to be working.
Yeah.
Our jobs his job looks very similar. My job looks different, but you know, we don't have a lot of the biggest, I think, change external factor has been not having daycare or school to rely on.
Mm-hmm.
But we also, I mean, we do that during holidays and summer vacations and things like that. So it's not, you know, this is the first time Sloane's been in school. So it's like, this was kind of new to begin with. So I feel like we're kind of in a coasting
Yep.
state right now. When you talk about the different stages, and you were talking about how you guys have been going through it, it reminds me a lot of how you feel as a new parent. Because, you
Tell me
know,
about that.
Jason and
I
I,
know nothing about that.
so Jason and I dated for 10 years prior to getting married.
Same.
And it's all the cool kids do.
Totally.
And we had Sloane like within that year of getting married. We knew we wanted to start a family, and at that point I wasn't in training anymore, and I was like, okay, that's kind of what we were waiting on for a lot of our life things. Was I wanted to be able to live with my husband in the same house, and then be able to start a family when we wanted. So there was like this big high of getting married, and we took this fantastic honeymoon, and went on African safari, and I was finishing residency. I mean, like all these wonderful things were happening. And then I got pregnant and we had Sloane. And then when you bring that baby home and, you know, you don't get sleep, and you're in pain, and I'm nursing and trying to figure out how that looks and how it feels, and, you know, managing a whole nother level of stress. You really, like, you know, at 3 a.m. when you're tired and the baby won't go back to sleep, like I've probably said quite a few choice words to Jason that he would not want to repeat, you know, like,
Sure.
you can't even understand what this is like, you know, like, get out of here. You know, but, and you had just been on this, like, you know, when you're pregnant, as long as you're feeling well, like, it's really this like 9 to 10 month period of planning and celebration. And it's like this, you know, and then all of a sudden, like, boom, you have this new role to fill, and you're both trying to fill it together and complement each other. And that's just with the baby. When you have a child that then responds to discipline and limits and boundaries, then you have to really, like, Jason has a parenting style and I have a parenting style, and they're different, and his
Yeah.
is wrong, clearly.
Obviously. You have so much more experience. He has no idea what he's doing.
Right. I mean, we only became parents at the exact same time, right?
Yeah,
But, you know, you go through all of these, like, in this new role that we found as parents. It's even the stages as the kids grow up, like, are challenging us in different ways. And I think, you know, looking back on the reasons that we came together as a union, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
we recently rewatched our wedding video and, like, listened to our vows, because we wrote our own vows.
Yeah.
And it was just such a nice, like, exercise, like, just to really just listen to those words and, like, remember what it felt in the moment to look at each other, and it was just the two of us, and we didn't care about anything else in the world except that
Yeah.
it was our wedding day. It was just a really nice, like, exercise that I think we will do much more frequently than we have done before, because you're right, like, it brings you back to all of the reasons why you were compatible and you had the same goals and the same dreams and the same vision, even when the little minutia of life can get in the way and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes distract you from that.
Yeah. I love that. We do not have a wedding video. We did write our own vows. Joel vowed to be a Patriots fan, so that has worked out well for me. He's followed through on that
I
vow.
vowed to be a Redskins fan,
Oh.
and I lied.
I vowed to try to learn how to cook. And
You did.
I'm trying. It's a constant process, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Those are fun. We should we should have some sort of an exercise where we all share our wedding vows. I mean, we have an engaged couple. We have a couple engaged couples in the group that might need some inspiration for some wedding vows. But
I will say that was a good process. Like, just like when I think back on writing those things down, like we talk about like writing goals and setting goals and stuff and putting them on paper. But like, I mean, that's kind of why I wanted to write my own, was to say how I really felt in front of my friends and family to the person that I love the most. Just made it feel like I was going to be that much more dedicated and you know, more heartfelt.
Yeah. That brings up a really interesting point too, because when I think back, Joel and I actually had some disagreements over writing our own vows, but it turned into his fear of needing to like memorize them. Like when I said, I think we should write our own vows, he was like, hell no, like, I know, like, but what he heard was he needed to like stand there and speak from the heart and have it like memorized. And it took like 2 or 3 conversations talking about the importance of communication to really like, for me to articulate what I meant. And then for him to be like, oh yeah, I can do that. Like if I can read them, then that's a different story. So apparently he's afraid of speaking from the heart to me. Whatever, I'm not easily offended, thank God. But no, so what made me think, I got thinking about one of the things that you were saying about just the history and going back to the things that you love, kind of remembering, bringing those things up that you really loved and like starting that process and journey with your spouse is another thing that I really focused a lot on just in the last couple of days. Is Joel and I met at work in San Francisco. And so one of the very first things I fell in love with him for was his work ethic. So it would be really hypocritical of me now to use that against him. And that's a hard thing for me to accept because that's on me. Like I really have to find that fine line between I'm just mad that his work is taking so much time, or am I really being rejected? Like those are 2 different things. Like there's a difference between him spending all of his time at work because he's avoiding being home. And then they're spending so much time at work because work is so hard right now. And I think being honest with myself about, you know what I really love and admire about him is his willingness and ability to do whatever it takes for his job. And I can't pick and choose when I want to love that trait. You know?
That's right.
I don't know if there's anything that you have in your relationship that you like love and then sometimes have to remind yourself that you love that. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I can relate to that exact statement.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I think one of the things that I did not know really many, if any, farmers on a personal level before I met Jason.
Yeah.
And I did love how much of a hard worker he is, and how what I think one of the things I admire the most about him is how passionate he is about his job. You know, like I've gone through so many phases where I have hated my job, not my current job, but my prior job, like, and the one I left to move back home.
Yeah.
And I remember like having conversations over dinner with him, like, what is it like to really love what you do? Like, tell me what that feels like.
Yeah.
And, you know, he could just speak from the heart, you know, like I enjoy working with my hands. I enjoy working outside. I enjoy carrying on a legacy from my family. I enjoy putting something in the ground and nurturing it and watching it grow. I enjoy managing, like every aspect of his job is something that he enjoys.
Yeah.
So, you know, I do often, I mean, I'm guilty of it, of making him feel like he needs to choose between work and us.
Always. Yeah, I think we all do
if
it.
I'm home with the kids and I'm stressed out and he hears it on the phone, he's like, well, I could spend another hour on the tractor and not have to go in for the weekend, or I could come home now. And what I appreciate is that he's not saying he doesn't have to work.
Yeah.
But he is at least flexible enough to say, if you need me, I'll come home. But you have to know that means I got to make it up another time.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I love that though, because that you have to take that ownership of that, because I can relate to that totally. Of for whatever reason, I can be short and just feel like I need him to come home and to do whatever. The exact same situation or conversation can kind of talk me off a ledge a little bit and put it into perspective. It's easy. You're in the moment of what's going on in your world, but that's their way of communicating. You know what? I hear you and I appreciate that and I'm happy to help. I do have a couple other things going on now. I could do it tomorrow or something. And then normally that is enough to calm me down and just be like, no, you're right. Finish up what you've got going on. I'll be fine. When I see you in 2 hours or something.
Right. Well, and like for a lot of us where our jobs are our lifestyle, right? He really, and because he's so passionate about it, he wants the kids to be as involved in it as he can. So if he can take a kid with him, he will. Like if it's like on that Saturday that it's just a couple hours of tractor work, he'll say, oh, I'll take one of the kids and they can just ride with me. And then you'll have just one and then it'll be sharing it. So that's, a creative way to kind of incorporate some more sharing of duties while also having to get stuff done. So, I think it's trying to think outside the box and kind of being a little intuitive to what it is your partner needs, but making sure that partner is also being honest and communicating about what they need.
Yeah.
With your realizations that you're talking about, have you noticed a difference in how Joel responds?
Totally.
Like, have you noticed any change on his? So how so?
Well, well, for one, just the tension is gone. And that was our own, like, again, I reiterate, that was not tension towards the marriage. That was tension that we were both holding on to from what we had been through that day, that week, that month, that when we were getting together, we weren't really taking the time to connect about it. It was, he was coming home to do a couple of tasks and to help me out. And that, when you think about it, just adds on to the stress. And then he's coming home at his own schedule, so it doesn't necessarily fit great into my timing. So then I'm trying to make, help him with his projects on his time, but I was in the middle of 3 other things that I'm doing, so I'm just kind of on edge. So it's been the one, just communication of making sure we coordinate that better and making sure that all of the times we see each other aren't around a task. And then just making a conscious effort to have the very first exchange be positive and encouraging and loving. And that is as simple as a tone of voice, right? Like that, it really is. It's not even necessarily that we're communicating different words. We're just communicating different tones. Like just taking a breath and taking it on myself, taking the ownership to make sure that what I have going on for stress inside me does not come out as stress towards him. And I think through the act of doing that, your partner is inevitably going to respond a little bit differently because he's not then getting put on edge by what I said or vice versa.
Right.
And I think I think it's hard to conceptualize for somebody, like if you're in the middle of a situation and you maybe are on a downward spiral or in this like floundering stage with your spouse and it just seems to be a never-ending cycle, I think it's really easy to focus on the things that you wish your partner did differently. And I've done that many times. And, we've moved a lot, and over the course of just moves, I've been really fortunate enough to to learn more about myself and figure out what works and what doesn't for me when it comes to making friends or working, or what I can do that doesn't overwhelm what he does, because the reality is he's always going to be very busy, and we've lived by that occupation. But
Right.
it was when I was able to make a shift to think, how can I interact in my marriage differently, versus I really wish Joel was doing this differently, that I actually saw tangible changes, one in how I felt, and then just in how he would respond. Because if I'm going to, combat him combatively, then it's like a natural instinct just to respond. And again, it's, we have a wonderful relationship. 20 years, we're going to have different ups and downs, and there are just more like stressful times than others. But, I worry about when I talk to friends or people, and it's constantly, my spouse is doing this or doesn't do this or can't do this. I always just wonder, if you internalized that energy and thought, this is one tangible thing I can do differently that would have a positive impact on my spouse. So, for an example, Brene Brown. Everybody knows I love me some Brene Brown. But there's a podcast that she did. She's great, with Tim Ferriss, I think it was, that I listened to actually just on our dream vacation here, so not too long ago. But they were talking about relationships, and she has an exercise that she goes through with her husband, because her husband is a doctor, a pediatrician, I think. She's running, this global movement of shame research, and she's got a new podcast. She has a lot going on. And they have 2 kids, one in college and one in high school. So a lot of the different moving parts. And what they do is, when one comes home at the end of the day, if they're feeling low on just what they have to give to the relationship, they give a percentage of what they have to give. So like, I come home and I say to you, man, it's been a day, I only have 20%. If then now Joel knows that, like, I'm running low on like my give a fucks, so to speak, like, so he needs to have more. So he either needs to be honest with, okay, I got your back, I've got the other 80, so we come up to 100%. Or if he's like, you know what, I've had a day too, I'm only at 20% too, then we both have to relax our expectations of the other and of ourselves. You can't like lean into, if I come home and say that I'm at 20%, it would be irresponsible of Joel to be like, well, I really need you to mow the lawn and do the dishes and do this load of laundry. I need this shirt for tomorrow. Like, that's just unfair to the other spouse. So I think it does come down to communication. And the more that you can be upfront about, hey, I had a great day, I'm feeling great. Or if I see him come home. So we don't actually use those percentages, but hearing her talk about that has made me observe him when he gets home from work and almost come up with my own percentage of where I think he is based on how he's acting, which is, is only fair. Like, I've known him long enough to be able to do that. I can't plead ignorance and be like, well, you didn't tell me you had a bad day. Like, you can tell when your spouse has had a bad day and when they're overwhelmed. And I think just being able to take a lot of ownership of how I am engaging has made a huge difference without actually communicating that specifically to Joel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. We don't use the percentages either. We communicate so much during the day.
Do you? See, we don't. So that's interesting. Like, how much? Like text, phone call, like...
So a lot of texting. He called me while I was on with you. And, Jason's on his phone all day. Even if he's on the tractor, he has like a headset because he's getting calls from truck drivers who are delivering things and other farmers and seed customers. And that's how he and his other like staff communicate, like someone's in a field here and someone's in a field there. And so they call.
Yeah.
So, he can't always text because of what he's doing. So there's a lot of like 10-second calls, like, hey, I was thinking about this for dinner, or hey, I'm going to be this. And the one thing that has always driven me crazy, and I know if Jason listens to this, he'll say, yeah, it's true. He can never tell me when he's going to be home.
Right.
Like,
Joel's the same.
like it'll be like noon, right? And I'm like, all right, so what time should I expect you? And he's like, I have no idea. You have no idea? Like, is it going to be 5 or is it going to be midnight? Like, no idea? I know he has some idea.
Yeah.
And I just kind of like that expectation early in the day if I'm here with the kids, so that I know like how I can plan the day and prepare for multiple things to keep them occupied so that I can keep my sanity.
Yes.
If he has an unexpected late night, I know that's going to raise my anxiety up high. Yeah. So I just kind of like to have some sort of an idea. So we're in constant communication about what's going on with his day and like how late he's going to be and that kind of thing. So I can tell, and he can tell, like if it's been a day before he even sets foot in the door. And so we let go of some of those little tasks that add up. Like if it's been a really hellacious day, we might skip bath night for the kids. Like that's one task that just sometimes is, if you've got kids, you just know bath night can be or we will like leave the dishes in the sink that night. Like, cause our evening routine, once you put the kids down, is even though it might just be like looking at something on our phones on the couch next to each other, we're relaxing next to each other. And every little task that we do after dinner eats into that time. Yeah. So that's kind of how we have managed it. Or like, right now, if we're more stressed, he'll send me a text and he'll be like, are we drinking tonight or no? And I'm like, we said we weren't going to. But, I can tell like that's a sign that he's feeling like a beer would relax him, or that he needs some sort of, and we don't really plan our meals around. Like I think Brene said, they'll get carry out. Like if it's been a really bad and they don't feel like eating, and so we have a few meals kind of planned out for the week, but we might choose the easiest one, or the one, like, so those little things that I think just can help ease up that mental load of decision making and tasks that you have to get done. That's really helpful to do. Like if you have some things that you can just discard at the end of the day if it's really bad.
And another thing that is still a constant evolution for me, but I think just getting really honest about what things are really important and what things are almost just like you're holding on to, even though it might not make any sense. And my example of that, something that I've long ago let go, is I used to try to have this conversation about when are you going to be home. The hotel industry is very similar, right? Like you never know what's going to happen or what guest is going to come in and have what issue or what's going to go wrong or anything. And, it is anywhere from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. And so we lived in Indianapolis, and it was a constant for years of like, what time are you going to be home tonight? And I was using the whole, well, how am I supposed to make you dinner if I don't know what time you're going to be here, as kind of like the trap of it. And in my mind, it was justified, right? Because I grew up, it's very important to my mother that we sat down and had a meal together. And I understand that is important, but it wasn't a stake I should have been willing to put my marriage on, right? Like it was unfair of me to use that as a reason to get upset with him when he couldn't commit to a time. But I stuck with it, man, and it did not go well. But like now I just appreciate like that leftovers are a thing, and that I can lovingly prepare you a microwaved plate when you get home. And I'm also not cranky hungry because I didn't wait for you for dinner. I ate when I was hungry, and I can cook whatever time of day I want. it doesn't mean I love you any less that I'm not waiting for it to be fresh off the stove when you get home. So really being able to be honest about, like, is it really that important to me that the meal is ready 5 minutes before we sit down at the table to have dinner as a couple? Or am I just being an unrealistic bitch? Yeah, like that's one thing that I wish I could think of some other ones off the top of my head, but I think being honest about the things that we're holding on to that make us upset about what it is about that particular thing that has made it so important. And is it actually something else? For me, I was really I just wanted him to come home. He had that experience in Indianapolis, it was a very, we've had different groups of friends, obviously, in different places that we've lived. And that one, for some reason, was very singles focused. So where we've been at hotels where we have a lot of couple friends, everybody he worked with was single. And so they were just doing a lot, and I was just feeling left out. When I think back and I'm really honest about it, so I was just desperately trying to get him to come home and spend time with me. I wasn't strong enough to explain that or communicate that. So I was using this meal preparation, dinner together, as the thing that should be important when it was kind of just a facade,
Yeah. I think that speaks to, like, trying to get back to the emotion of it. Like, name the emotion that you're feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like at sometimes that emotion was jealousy
Totally.
rather than anger, right?
Yeah,
And so if you
totally.
can properly name the emotion, then you can kind of work through where that's coming from
Mm-hmm.
and how important that is. Or is that is that something that you're internalizing, and or is it something being done to you in a way, like, I think if you really get honest about the emotion that you're feeling,
Mm-hmm.
in that situation, that can be really helpful. And it's funny, like, this is how we teach our kids about emotion, but I
Oh,
feel like
yeah.
there's not a lot of, like, continuing education for adults about emotion, right?
Yeah.
My kids watch Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, and that's a spin-off of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So Daniel Tiger was the tiger in the land of make believe with the trolley and everything. And
Yeah.
now it's this kid's cartoon, and it's very emotion based. And they
Mm-hmm.
talk about, like, name your emotion and then how to regulate it, right? Because you might not
Oh.
be able to control your initial like gut emotion that you feel, but you can control what you do with that emotion.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where that whole "you can be
Mm.
mad but you can't be mean" came from with my daughter. We talk all
Yeah.
the time about, like, being able to regulate your emotions and to, like, think through them is really about recognizing them. And that's step one. It's like, okay, I'm feeling a certain way. And for kids, it might be like, I'm feeling, they can't say mad, but they might have, like, a symptom, or, like, "Arr,"
Mm-hmm.
or a face that they make. And so you teach them what that word is and then what that word means. And then, like, for the angry song with Daniel Tiger, it's like they count 1, 2, 3, 4 to
Okay.
bring that emotion down, and then they talk about why they had that emotion. And we're taught that when we're kids, but, like, I could have used that as a young wife. I could use that
Totally.
now.
Yeah.
And it's funny, that's, like, emotions are complex and relationships are complex. And unless, I think, we're constantly working toward making them better and better
Mm-hmm.
understanding ourselves as this role, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it just takes constant work, and we're all just trying to get better at it. I struggle a lot with that. Um, Trying not to be jealous or trying to not be a certain way. But I also realize, okay, I feel that way. I name it.
Mm-hmm.
And let it go. That kind of helps too, just to process a little bit and say what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So that transitions us to a nice little segue into one of the things that I did was I made a note of all of the unintended positive consequences of this experience, you know, because it's a huge thing that we talk about at Heirloom too. You know, just what you choose to focus on is going to be what you notice the most. And so why would I not then choose to focus on the ways that this is actually benefiting me and the things that I'm finding that I'm really enjoying about it that I would not be experiencing otherwise? So I was going to go through a couple. I should have prepped you. If you have any of your own, then maybe you can think of them while I'm talking about them. But well, so one of the main ones is that we haven't really talked on, we won't get into detail about it, is that we've had some behavioral issues with one of our dogs. And so if we did not have him there with the ability for her to stay with him there, my stress level would be through the roof because just her behavior. Home workouts do not agree with a high anxiety dog. She does not understand why people are talking to me through a computer. She does not understand why I am throwing around a dumbbell or jumping up and down off of the ground. It just gets her on edge, and none of that works for her. And I have no way to avoid that here. So that's, I mean, in and of itself has been a huge benefit. I've been sleeping on Joel's side of the bed, which I don't know why. It just started, but I think it's really cute. We'll have to see if he switches back, but when he comes back. But for some reason, I just started sleeping on his side of the bed. I get to eat whenever I want, which I think is for what we've been talking a lot about nutrition, and the thing that if anybody's tracked their food ever or tried to fit any sort of macros, you realize how much of a trial and error that is, and how much that really does just disrupt any sort of meal routine you may have had before. So instead of worrying about making something for myself and then making something different for him, or is he gonna like this, or is this a complete meal for him, I can purely worry about myself and make those little tweaks without any, repercussions on his side. So that it's taken a level of stress out of that, because I don't want to inconvenience him. I don't want to force any way of eating on him, but I do prepare the meals. And so it's just been nice to be like, well, I don't even have to consider it. And I think just appreciating instead of, I've shifted my focus on, instead of getting annoyed when I look outside and the lawn isn't mowed, or those sorts of things, like shifting it around and just being appreciative that he does do that when he's here. Like, it doesn't do me any good to get mad about it not getting done right now. Putting that into perspective of it's one part of the bigger picture, and then turning that into, appreciation and gratitude for that he is the guy that will do that when he has time, and will be the first one to kind of pick up all that slack when he's back here. That's just not happening now. I think that perspective, and just that it's a choice, right? We talk about choices all the time. Even if like my initial gut reaction is like annoyance when I look out the window and the grass is really long, just not feeding into that, taking that second to realize that that's not a big deal. That isn't a reflection on how much he cares about us or the home or anything like that. And that it's fallen down on the priority list, and that's okay. It almost just take that second to just be in love again. It has been fun.
That's awesome.
So he comes for date night now. So he'll come and we'll have like a little bonfire and dinner, and he'll go back to the hotel. And so now it's become a joke. You kind of go through different stages, and sometimes you can't joke about things and sometimes you can. But then like we'll joke.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about doing something, and we'll be like, "Do you want to go to your place or mine?"
I love that.
Yeah.
So I mean, with Jason and I, it's a little bit different, because I think because of coronavirus, we are together more.
Yeah.
And I say that even though we're both working, but because on the weekends we're home, and we used to find ourselves in so many social environments, whether or not it was a kid's birthday party or visiting friends or family or going out to the bar or whatnot. And when we are socializing with other groups of people, we are not usually hanging out together. You
Gotcha.
know, like we're visiting with the people that, you know, we're there to see
Yep.
because, you know, we live together. So we're supposed to just always be with each other, right? So what we've been doing, number one, we've been working out together, which has been really fun.
Yep.
We don't ever get to do that otherwise because we're just splitting time and someone's got to stay home with the kids while they sleep. And, you know, so we've never gotten to do that, which is great. And then two, unintended positive consequence, we've gotten a lot of yard work done. And stuff that, you know, I was trying to convince him that we should try to hire someone to do, and he was trying to be more frugal and save the money. But I was like, but we don't have the time. And when we do have the time, it's me watching the kids and you doing the yard work. So it's really not family time.
Yeah.
But because there's nothing else to do, we are doing it as a family, right?
Yeah.
So we're like saving some money, and we're, you know, we've built a fire pit, and we're trying to, you know, just spend more of that weekend time together. And which in turn makes me less needy of him needing to come home at a certain time when I am here with the kids.
Yes.
So
it's amazing how that works.
I have been, I mean, I guess I'm a positive person. I'm not like, you know, an eternal optimist, but like I have often thought about like all of the positive things that are coming out of this. I mean, it is sucky, and there's a lot of things I really miss. And like the one thing I want to do is like give my parents a big hug. Like that's one thing I'm looking forward to the most. But, you know, I'm learning a lot about ourselves and our family, and being home with the kids isn't as terrible as I was anticipating it was going to be. And that sounds awful, but you know, when you've done it for 3 or 4 weeks in a row, you kind of get the hang of it. You know, when you only do it on the weekends,
Yeah.
you know, I wasn't as good at it.
Yeah. So I wonder, you know, if there are is anybody out there that maybe hasn't found that rhythm, that they're 3 or 4 weeks in and they hear you say, I've done it for 3 or 4 weeks now, I've gotten the hang of it. And they're like, what, how did that happen? Like, do you know, is there anything that you feel like is working particularly well for you? I know you talked about like actually playing with your kids. You know, I do want, there's a difference between like fully engaged and just like overseeing.
So I find one, my patience is a lot better on the days that I get up and work out in the morning. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. I think one, I've accomplished something in the morning, right? I got those positive pheromones going, right? But it's also one less thing I have to fit into the rest of my day, right? Because like I'm putting an emphasis on like I want to work out 4 or 5 times a week. And if I know it's on my to-do list, but I've done it in the beginning, if somebody has like a complete tantrum and it gets in the way of the time that I have set to work out, I haven't lost it. I haven't lost the workout. So my anxiety isn't as high up about that. With schoolwork with my daughter, I think that we just got into a routine where we have a set place where we do it. We sit next to each other. I've learned like using my computer is a lot better than using her school supplied iPad because it's just slow or whatnot. So if I use a different device that makes it easier, we get it done faster. And I give her options about what she wants to do first because she's more engaged when it's something she's interested in. So we don't have those fights about, you know, well, we're going to do math or we're going to do reading, and she really doesn't want to do it. I don't feel guilty about giving them their tablets when I need to do something. So I try to not give them a ton. I don't want them watching TV all day long, right? But like when I have my conference calls and I really need them to not bother me, they go on their tablet and they play a game or they watch a show. And I don't have any guilt over that because that's survival.
Yes.
And that's what it is right now.
Yeah.
And for the most part, we try to keep them on a routine, right? So even with school, they're in bed at a certain time, they wake up at a certain time, they eat at a certain time, Brady naps at a certain time, and all of that is consistent, even though they don't have to be up at a certain time and they don't have to go to bed at a certain time. That's to keep them sane. If they get sleep, we get sleep. Everybody's happy.
Yeah.
So I think it's some of those little things. Like I said, we're lucky in that Jason is still working every day, and so it feels very much the same. But it's those little things that I have found that help me out to realize that this is different, but now we're in a new routine, and it's just how life is, and it's going to be like this through May 15th at least, because that's at least when schools are closed. And so there's no reason to fight it.
Right.
I mean, I could bitch and complain about it all I wanted, but it's not going to change the fact that I have to be home with them a few days a week, and so does he. So I think it's like, just hunker down and do it, because there's no other way around it.
Well, and setting yourself up for success, going with that, like, hunker down and do it, and you're going to do it. So don't go in with a bad attitude. Like that, what you were saying was setting up her workspace. I've had to go through that here too, because I've had a couple I've shifted my workspace. I know we've had a couple members that have also like realized it doesn't work well to have your office right by your fridge. But what I realized, I like an organized house. So I don't have the cleanest house in town, and I don't have the fanciest house in town, but it has organization and structure to it. And so the chaos of my work life being in the living room and in the kitchen just threw me off. It made me feel uneasy. And it took me weeks to kind of figure out what that is, or what that was, that I was feeling just a sense of unease. But it was the constant like passing of like all the things that I needed to do, where now I've set up an area in our bedroom. We have a couch and a coffee table and an area that I don't walk by it 100 times a day. Like I leave it in there. It's a designated space. I feel more productive, and I'm not constantly feeling like I'm getting pulled in different directions. Like when I'm sitting in that space, I know I'm doing work, and I'm not focusing on, dust bunnies under the kitchen table or the dishes in the sink, or, that sort of a thing. So
for Sloan, I took it a step further, and we have like a whiteboard and markers and an eraser and pens and, and I cleared out a cabinet, and there's a shelf, and it's on her level.
I love
so she puts it away.
Yeah.
She gets it out. But I don't have to spend 10 minutes looking for the stuff, because it has a set space, right?
Yes.
So that's like one other thing that would cause me anxiety, because I'm like, oh, I'm trying to find it. I've got a call in an hour, and she needs to get this much done. If it has a place and it's her responsibility to go get it and bring it, it's not on me.
Yeah.
So, and what Chris was talking about.
What's that?
I was going to say, and what Chris was talking about with having his kids be more independent.
Yes.
Both of my kids are now making their own breakfast.
That's impressive.
I mean, they're putting in like a frozen pancake into the microwave.
Yeah, but that's something that probably you couldn't necessarily do if you were then also trying to get out of the house to get to work. Like it's an opportunity to just instill that habit, even if it is a frozen pancake in the toaster.
Exactly. I mean, it's a little thing, but to Brady, the fact that he can do that is like a big win.
Yeah.
So
I love that. And I think we could have a whole discussion about like quarantine routines, because I think that's something that is easy to overlook or easy to dismiss as like, oh, it's not worth the time. But the effect on your productivity and just your peace of mind and just mental distraction, I find it enormous for me. And it sounds like for Sloan.
Yes.
Well, I really appreciate your time today, my dear. Good to see you.
Thanks for
Lovely
having me. Good
talk.
to see you.
We'll have
I
to
can't
see.
wait to hug you too, by the way.
I know, you too. Hugs, I do. I miss hugs tremendously. Yeah, it'll be an interesting couple of weeks. I think I'm excited about the path that we're all on. I think it really is proving the point that if you surround yourself with people who are also just on this journey to make the most of their life, that's going to come through when times are hard too. So, I encourage anybody, if they're not surrounding themselves with people that are lifting them up and looking for ways to succeed in this quarantine, then, for your own mental health and well-being, it would benefit everybody to surround yourself with people who are constantly on the lookout for betterment, right? To get better and be positive and succeed even when times get hard. So thank you so much for your time, my dear. Have a wonderful day.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Hi. Look
What's
at you.
up? Well, I got it kind of figured out. This is my bed. I can't get that to disappear.
Fantastic. Let me see if I can get mine.
My teeth still look yellow though.